Don't let the final score fool you. The Vikings took it to the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field, and I'm here to tell you how. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. So hello and welcome in. If you're new here, maybe you're just very excited because the Vikings are 4-0. They beat the Packers. Hello, welcome. You can find the Locked On Vikings podcast anywhere you find your favorite shows, Monday through Friday. Just search it out. You can find the show as well on YouTube or on Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today's episode, let's recap the Vikings win over the Green Bay Packers. If you're an audio listener, you heard the postcast. If you are a YouTube viewer, I hope you went over to Locked On Minnesota Sports for the postcast live. You can find that after every single game. As soon as we hit 000, we go live over there to talk about what happened. And that's a more, all-encompassing, try to kind of hit all the big beats. So let me focus on, I guess, what I've been enjoying in these Monday episodes is what's the moment? What's the moment of the game? The one that defines what this game was for me. The most, if you wanted to tell the story of the game in one moment, what would it be? And my answer to this one might surprise some of you, and you might disagree with it, which is totally fine. But for me, the moment of the game comes in the middle of the second quarter. The Vikings have turned over the Packers twice. They are they're in the red zone. And Sam Darnold throws a back shoulder ball that phases through, I think it was Corey Ballantyne. No, it was Keyshawn Nixon. Justin Jefferson catches it, end zone, and I'll go with emphatic Gritty in the end zone, looking at the fans to go up 28-0. To me, this is the moment. This is, as O'Connell called it in his locker room speech after the win, this is the avalanche. You feel the avalanche. You can feel the team starting to feel the avalanche and going, oh my God, we are absolutely belt to behind on somebody again. You can feel them buying in and believing that they are the unstoppable force in this thing and that it is on the other team to simply walk out with all their limbs intact. You can feel that. And that kind of thing has been present now for 4 weeks in a row. They've gotten off to these incredibly hot starts, gotten into these great positions, and the Packers are the only team that didn't pack it in and basically quit on it, right? I mean, the 49ers kind of vaguely tried to make a game of it, but really couldn't. The Texans totally imploded on themselves. The Packers went and made a game of it. This play comes on the heels of just an absolute thrashing. You have an opening drive score, beautiful drive. Packers go down and miss a field goal. Vikings score on the way back. You're up 14-0. And then you get pick, score. Kamu Grugier-Hill picks one off. Jordan Love, I'm going to say, tests a window he probably shouldn't have tested. Kamu dives on it. In the collision of all of that, Christian Watson gets hurt. He's feared to have a high ankle sprain for your fantasy purposes. That could have been a lot worse. But a lot of times that twisty one turns into more sprainy stuff rather than full on ACL tear out for the season, the really scary stuff. So high ankle sprain, I think that's relatively good news considering how bad that could have been. But so he leaves the game. Vikings take over on offense. They score again. And then another one, high ball. Maybe there's some tippage going on there, a little tip drill thing. Shaq Griffin comes down with it, almost pick sixes it. And it's after that play. I think there was a holding penalty or something. Yep, one holding penalty on the goal line. You have first and goal from the 14. And Sam Darnold hits that Justin Jefferson one. At this moment, we are absolutely thrashing them in all phases of the game. And you can tell in a lot of different parts of this, this is the kind of day Green Bay is having. Jordan Love does not look good to this point. He's thrown 2 picks so far. Neither of them were particularly good throws. A lot of his throws are worm burners. They're at the ankles. They're dying on him, as the broadcast said. Trent Green said something about how maybe it's because he's not stepping into it because of his knee, but he never steps into it. Like, he's always a back foot thrower. It's just what he does, which isn't optimal, but it's like worked well enough for him like thus far that they just kind of let him do it. But yeah, that means you're going to have spotty accuracy. And especially if you don't quite trust your base, it maybe is exacerbating that problem. So you've got that going on. They missed a kick. They've got their pass rush isn't getting home at all in the first half. Oh my God. The O-line absolutely blasted that pass rush of Devontae Wyatt, who also would eventually leave the game. Rashawn Gary, all these guys totally blasted him. Long pockets all day, clean for Sam Darnold. And then at 28-0, the Packers are going to punt it back to the Vikings with I think a minute or so to go. And maybe they were going to have actually a chance to make it, 31-0, 35-0 if they wanted to go for it, or they could have easily just run the ball, gone into half, been really happy. Jalen Naylor loses the punt. He's in because of a rib injury that Brandon Powell sustained on a big hit earlier in the half. He would end up coming back to the game, but he's probably hurting pretty good. So Jalen Naylor is in, backup punt returner. I think he loses the ball in the sun. That's the way that Kevin Harlan sort of posited, because he was looking right into the sun. Loses the ball a little bit. It's way over his head, but he actually tries to back up and overhead it. Muff punt. Packers recover, 1st and goal on the 3, and they'll score a couple plays later with 14 seconds left in the half. So we go into halftime 28-7, and now they think they got something. Even with that, they will stop the Packers on the other side of halftime in their first drive coming out of the half. And the Vikings have a chance to put it away. They drive it all the way down to point blank range. And Sam Darnold on a 2nd down and 1, they're taking a shot to the end zone, right? It's a corner route to Aaron Jones. They really wanted to get Aaron Jones in the end zone because they wanted to have Aaron Jones Lambeau leap. If you're watching on YouTube, the thumbnail of this episode reveals that he eventually did, but he did it after the game. Just celebrating the win entirely, and you get this great picture. But this one doesn't quite get there. It is an ill-advised throw, and it's picked off by Xavier McKinney, who's been doing all these interceptions. He has 4 on the season already. Crazy stuff. Now, don't yell at me. Okay, I'm getting to it. The refs probably shouldn't have let this one stand. The officiating crew, it was a called on an interception on the field. Turnover is reviewed automatically, and it's very clear that he's bobbling it as he's going down. But for whatever reason, they let it stand. You're not going to get that call. My thing on this is a little bit man, but you threw a really bad pick. That should have been caught. Just the fact that he kind of maybe bobbled it a little bit is his mistake, and he shouldn't have been rewarded with that. But at the same time, it's Sam. For me, the more productive takeaway is, Sam, you can't throw that. And if he did bobble, we would be calling it probably a lucky break. That would have been the 2nd dropped interception on the day. On the opening drive, Sam Darnold threw directly to a linebacker and he dropped it. So that would have been the 2nd dropped pick of the day. And I feel a little bit I don't feel too entitled to a 2nd dropped pick. He probably just deserved that one. Even though it was the wrong call, and you can be as mad as you feel about that. That could have put it away. It could have been 31-7 right there, maybe even 35-7. And, we would have been talking about maybe Jordan Love should have the baseball cap on because he's playing very clearly hobbled and not himself. That could have been the moment. Terrible play, and that's the kind of thing you just are going to have to put up with Sam Darnold. He's just going to do that. There's no world where we get into a game and go, I wonder if Sam Darnold won't do that. He's going to do that. It's what we bought into. And so far, it has been super, very absolutely worth it. Here's a stat for you. This came from, I think it was CBS Sports. There are 2 quarterbacks in NFL history who have started a game with 10 or more touchdowns in the first 4 games and won all those games. 2 people have done it. One is Patrick Mahomes, who did it in 2018, and then this year's Sam Darnold. That's the level of elite quarterbacking that we're seeing right now. I do not feel shy using the E word here to describe Sam Darnold September. Now, the true elites do it week in and week out and let it go all season. We've got a lot of season in front of us, but September has been an elite quarterbacking season so far. Fact. Indisputable. That said, things are starting to teeter in this one a little bit, and this is where the Packers really start to mount the comeback. But what I want to just put in your head before while we're getting into that is, at what point do the Packers have the chance to actually take this game? At what point in this do the Packers actually have a shot to take full control? When are they no longer chasing it? Just think about that as we get into the sort of second half collapse part of this one. That'll be next. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the best place to find last-minute tickets to anything, whether you are trying to get to, if you have a trip planned to London and maybe your tickets fell through or something like that kind of thing can happen. Gametime is a great place to get last-minute tickets to that sort of thing, or maybe you're just more excited about the Vikings than you thought you would be, and you want to maybe go grab tickets to that Kirk Cousins return to US Bank Stadium game against the Falcons, or maybe the next Packers game, which would be near New Year's. Maybe you want to party it up when you're coming home, when your kids are home from college or something like that. So whatever it is, you can find that stuff on Gametime. It's not just sports. You can find concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it is. And if you turn on the all-in pricing toggle, it's a switch you turn on in the app, and Gametime will show you the entire total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You just have to turn on the little button, and Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you can find that same seat, same section, same row, anywhere else for a lower price. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. That is the Gametime guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Hey, now that the Packers game is over, everything that I made on patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL about the Texans game is free to watch. So if you want to check out what I've been doing over there, film breakdowns and stuff, you don't have to pay me a dime. Of course, I would appreciate it. But go check out patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. So things are teetering. Things are on the brink, and we can all feel it, right? This is where we all get into these scars we've seen from the last 3 years, where the Vikings have let teams claw back no matter what the lead was, right? I think about like the Saints game with the Dobbs sanity thing last year, or the Bengals game last year where they were up 3 scores in the fourth quarter and lost that game in overtime. There were a whole bunch where the Vikings sprung out to a lead and you went, okay, when's the collapse coming? But the Vikings haven't been like that this year, not until this week, right? They put the Giants away. They put the Texans away. Those games were, we were changing the channel by the fourth quarter, right? So it didn't quite, to me, I guess, it didn't feel quite as like, oh no, here we go again, because this team has sort of already proven that they're a little bit different. But the Packers start to claw their way back into it. So how does this go, right? Sam Darnold takes a bad sack after that pick. They actually get the stop, punt it back. So we have pretty good field position going back to maybe see if we can put this thing away. We get a bad sack. For me, this sack was, so they blitzed both the A-gaps. They had Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker in both the A-gaps. So Garrett Bradbury has to pick one, right? You can't block 2 guys. So he picks Devontae Wyatt, which is usually his idea of most dangerous man, right? This is the principle, most dangerous man. Who has the fastest pass to the quarterback? Well, it's the guy right in front of you. So he picks the guy right in front of him. And then if somebody else comes up the A-gap, that's on Aaron Jones. So Aaron Jones blocks Quay Walker. Devontae Wyatt gets past Garrett Bradbury, and Jones leaves Walker to go help with that, which I think is a pretty critical mistake. You're not passing that guy off to anybody. You're leaving a faster player now. So the idea of who is most dangerous, well, Quay Walker is faster than Devontae Wyatt. So all things equal, he's going to take longer to get to the quarterback. So have him be the guy you let go. Doesn't matter. Sam Darnold takes the sack. And that leads to a 3rd and 25. They'll end up punting there. And then you get this big, long drive that almost goes down in scores. But again, I defy you. What is the moment that this game becomes in the Packers' control? It could have been this moment, right, where they could go down and score and start taking it back. We're still in the third quarter, lots of time left. But this drive will end on downs. On a great pass breakup by Shaq Griffin. Maybe it was a Dontavion Wicks drop. Kind of hard to tell if his hand actually got in there or not. But either way, this drive will end up on downs. There's 18 minutes left, and you're still up 28-7. This game is, by every measure of win probability and analytics and everything, this game is over. It has to be a full-on catastrophe for this game to become a loss. And we do have many catastrophes, but they all still weren't enough to lose it. That's, I think, the lesson that I want to come away with. So here is where the worst stuff starts to happen. The Vikings go 3 and out, they punt, and then the Packers take out tempo and start moving the ball with tempo. Now, tempo is actually a pretty good counter to the Flores defense. So much of the Flores defense is in disguises, in lining up somewhere pre-snap, determining all your communications and stuff. You look at the Vikings defense, they're all talking pre-snap. So during the cadence, when the quarterback is doing all that stuff, the Vikings are using that time. You go tempo, you take that time away from the defense, and it can actually generate a pretty big advantage for you as the offense if you all know what you're doing. The problem with tempo, and the reason this isn't something that a team can really come out and do all day and then put up 50 on us, right, is that in the NFL, people don't do that, right? The problem with tempo is that you sacrifice a ton of complexity. So the kind of offense that you would see in a tempo situation in the NFL would be easily countered by so many defenses because you could really only run so many concepts and you don't have the complexity you need to keep those defenses guessing. In college ranks, high school ranks, all that, those defenses aren't going to be quite as dominant, and you can kind of just run 6 or 7 staples and say, okay, play 2, play 4, play, blue, green, yellow, and you can have that nice, quick communicative style, or you can signal them in with, hand signals on the sideline like some tempo teams do in college. You can do all that, and you can get away with it because college defenses just aren't as good. But in the NFL, you can't really. But everybody can do tempo for a drive. Most teams come in ready to do a drive of tempo for a 2-minute drill or something, or for situations just like this, where we need a fast score, we're trying to mount a comeback, let's do tempo. So you ever ask, man, why don't teams do tempo more? It's really hard to run more than like a few plays in tempo. It's like kind of a scripted drive, like how you would start the game. And if they tried to come back and do another tempo drive after that, it would be a lot of the exact same calls. Defenses would catch on and start making plays. But this tempo drive does great. Big long drive, goes into a touchdown. And 2 plays later, strip sack. First down, Sam Darnold drops back to pass, which, by the way, why are we passing at this? 28-14. We're in the fourth quarter now. Like, run the ball. Oh my God. But no, we drop back to pass. We don't like what we see. We scramble a little bit. Sam Darnold gets up gimping a little bit. Maybe he did kind of look like he aggravated the knee a little bit, but he finished the game, so we'll have to just kind of monitor, make sure there's not like a swelling problem, or make sure we aren't hearing the dreaded MRI words again. But he'll finish the game, but the next play, unblocked dude off the edge, coming blindside, strip sack, Packers ball in the red zone, and they'll cash that in really quick. Suddenly, and they get the 2-point conversion. It's 28-22. This is the worst moment for the Vikings. 28-22, and you have the ball. And what the Vikings do in this moment to sort of get a foothold and stop the bleeding is drive down the field in 6 plays, 5 of which are passes, and 1 is a broken play. I don't know what it was supposed to be. Sam Darnold tries to can the play. It's too loud. Half the team doesn't hear it, and people don't. I think he was trying to do a rollout, and nobody ran a route, so he just ate it and lost 5 yards. So I think that actually might have been 6 passes. Why are we passing? This is if you want to, like, my critique of the play calling here, I don't mind balance in this situation or staying aggressive generally, but passing every single down to me is a little bit, you lost the plot. It's a little bit of like Kevin O'Connell being stressed out and turning into a 7-on-7 coach. Like, run duo. Holy crap. Chill out. And a lot of those plays snapped the ball at 9 seconds, 8 seconds. You weren't really taking the clock down to its final moments. Now you're only up 1 score, so maybe you're not too worried about that. But still, like, I think the idea of slowing the game down just for tempo and rhythm reasons, give everybody a deep breath between each play and go back to just executing, might have been helpful. But regardless, the Vikings will go. This drive goes well. As for as many complaints as I have in process, this drive goes well, and you can't argue with that. They get all the way down to point blank range. They'll kick a field goal, 31-22. So here's something to understand here. The Packers now have the ball. It's their 12th drive of the game. Outside of the opening drive, where they technically could have scored a touchdown and converted a 2-point conversion and taken the lead, they have never possessed the ball with the chance to take the lead. Outside of the opening drive, which kind of you could tie it, basically. Never. And on this drive, 2 plays, and Jordan Love, under pressure, will heave up an idiot duck, Byron Murphy comes down with it. That's basically all he was doing the whole offense, was throwing up ducks and hoping his guy came down with it. And you kind of like, eventually that chicken would come home to, or I guess that duck would come home to roost. And the punish comes in the fourth quarter, down 9 points. Byron Murphy gets it. The Vikings will go 3 and out, but at this point they're running because the clock is at the point where you just can never justify passing except for on third down. And then 2 plays into the next drive, the 13th possession for the Packers. Peanut punch by Byron Murphy, Vikings ball. They will have another reasonably long drive, and punctuated, I would say, or exclamation point on it, is a 3rd and 12 speed out toe tapper beauty by Justin Jefferson, who definitely pays off all the trash talk from the week. And a few run plays later, they have 3rd and 1 and then 4th and 1 in point blank range. They go for it, trying to ice the game. If they had gotten that, they'd be kneeling, basically. They'd already used all of Green Bay's timeouts. About 2 minutes and 20 seconds left. So I liked going for it there. And they didn't get it. Some of you might argue with the spot, which is fine. But regardless, they didn't get it. But now the Packers have to go score, onside, score with no timeouts. And they don't have enough time to score and like have the 2-minute warning and make us, I think they must onside. And so for me at that point, you're playing in fully warped situational football. All you need to do is give up a touchdown in more than 18 seconds, and it takes them about a minute. So that drive feels really bad, and because of the momentum and our trauma as Vikings fans, it feels really bad. All the like models don't blink at it. They're like, yeah, but you still need an onside kick, and nobody ever gets those. Sure enough, they go down, score again. So it will end up 31-29 will be the final score. But they have to onside kick to try to go get that game-winning field goal. You never get the onside kick. Josh Oliver falls on it, and the Vikings kneel the game out. This was a butt kicking. It was a shellacking. It was a thrashing. Might not feel like it right now, but hear me out. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Hey, one of the great things to do on FanDuel is live bet. Hey, what if you're looking at a Vikings game where they're leading by 3 scores and going, I can feel the collapse coming. You could have taken the Packers like plus 17 or something like that and like won that bet even though the Packers didn't actually come back and had both a Vikings win and a Grambling win. What's not to like? You can do all that kind of stuff as well as take classic spreads, over-unders, player props and parlays and all the stuff you love to do on these sports books. And you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the FanDuel website, right on FanDuel.com. That can help you make those decisions. You've got this big feed of information that you can refer to all in one convenient spot. You can also get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's one $5 bet on whatever it is will get you $200 in bonus bets right when you sign up. Whatever your first $5 bet is gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Once again, that is FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, all right, stop yelling at me. This was an ass kicking. I'm sorry, it was. This might not feel like it. The score certainly doesn't look like it. The Packers put up like 400 or more yards of offense. And I do think the Packers did some things here that are worth commending. And here's what I like to do on Locked On Vikings, especially if you're new. You got to know this about me. The rivalry stuff doesn't grip me as much as it might grip other Vikings shows. It's just not my thing. I like to keep it a little bit more even keel here. And I think that's really important with a game like this because most of the talk that I've seen about a game like this is people trying to circle back to their trash talk from the week and either say, haha, I was right, or haha, you were wrong. And it makes for a very like binary look at things. Well, the Vikings won. Haha, everything you said was wrong. Yeah, but the kickers actually missed twice, or the Packers kicker missed twice, and really, the Packers who lost by 2, really in spirit they won because of that. And, they're going to do moral victory stuff. But this is not a moral defeat. I think about the moral victory thing and the moral defeat thing is pretty stupid. You either won the game or you lost it. And usually, if you're going to like paint it as a moral victory or a moral defeat, you're ignoring stuff that really what led to the result of the game, which is why I started this show by picking out the moment, which is Justin Jefferson catching an absolutely godly touchdown, grittying on the yellow Packers font in the end zone, and staring directly at the fans and saying, "We're up 21-0 in your or 28-0 in your house." That defines the game for me, because that put the Packers into a hole that they could never really climb out of, and they could like kind of only backdoor make it look like they almost climbed out of it. But again, they never possessed the ball with a chance to take the lead after the opening drive, which was only technically. Never once did they possess the ball with a chance to take the lead. If you look at that, if you look at like ESPN win probability graphs where the win probability never really dipped below 80, and if you look at it's like quarterback stats, it's not a close game. Sam Darnold's completion percentage over expectation was over 10. Completed over 10% more of what he like should have based on depth of target and difficulty of pass. Jordan Love's was like 1. Basically completed what he was expected to complete. Sam Darnold did more. The Vikings won the rushing battle. The Vikings won the turnover battle 4-3. It's a lot of turnovers, 7 turnovers in a game. It makes one feel kind of wild. But if you want to say the Vikings didn't deserve to win because they turned it over 3 times, then you have to say the Packers didn't deserve to win more because they turned it over 4. And if you want to extend various charities to the Vikings or to the Packers to say, well, you know, if they had just cleaned up that and that, then they would have won. If you do the same thing for the Vikings, if you say something like, well, let's just, you know, say every ref call was actually correct, right? And you know, there were a couple of incomplete passes that were very borderline, and maybe the Packers want those back. So let's say, well, what if we got those calls? Okay, well then give us the interception. That shouldn't have been an interception in the red zone right at the start of the second half. If you extend a charity to the Packers that you don't extend to the Vikings, well, yeah, of course it looks like the Packers win because you are going into a hypothetical where they played better than they did. And guess what? That didn't happen. Candies and nuts. If you extend equal charities, I think the only argument you could make is that the Packers, you know, missed a couple kicks and the Vikings didn't, which is like, well, yeah, that's a great reason to say we won the game. Our kicker did better, yours didn't. That's an advantage that ended up being decisive. But also, as soon as the game became a 1-score game, as soon as it was 28-22, the Vikings went down and scored and made it a 2-score game again. And so if you make it so that the Packers make those field goals and make that happen sooner, I think the Vikings approach things differently. They certainly approach that final drive differently if it's not a 2-score game. If it's a 1-score game in that final drive, I don't think you see those safeties drop to nearly the depths that they dropped to. Those safeties were dropping 30. I don't think they do that if it's a 1-score game. I think they only do that if it's a 2-score game and you know that they need an onside kick. They need to score and get an onside kick. That's not to say, again, that the Packers did everything horribly and the Vikings did everything perfectly. I think what Jordan Love did in this game is commendable. On a hobbled knee, basically hooping, right? Avoiding pressure, throwing up these moon balls. Yeah, one of them did eventually bite you, but that's probably worth it considering all the production that came from them. A lot of deep balls to Jaden Reed and Dontavion Wicks. But I can't say Jordan Love had a good game. He missed a ton of throws and he threw 3 freaking picks. And I would even argue that all 3 were his fault, even the tip drill, which was a high ball. And you're begging for a pick if you throw it that high. And so I think about like, what if I was on the other end of this? And I've covered plenty of Vikings games that were on the other end of this, where they got the crap kicked out of them. They got their rear ends kicked in. And then they made a late rally to kind of backdoor make it look like it was a game. And for me, the vibe has always been, man, we were lucky to even be in that one, but we really kind of got smoked and here's our real problems. Never have I seen a game like that and then felt like the Vikings were entitled to a win actually. Maybe you would go, hey, good for them. I like how they fought, but they lost and the Vikings won that game. So good for the Packers for fighting. As for the Vikings, I think they had a couple of coverage busts. I think the game got stressful and I do think some people melted down. I think Kevin O'Connell in particular got way too aggressive with his play calling. I think in coverage on a couple of those touchdowns, you had miscommunications, guys busting, guys taking the wrong guy. That is a problem. You can't have that happen when the game starts to roll away from you. But those problems paled in comparison to the non-existent pass rush and the quarterbacking issues that the Packers dealt with. Those problems cost them the game, and the Vikings were good enough to punish it. So I defy you. Which possession where the Packers could cut into the lead but not take the lead of their own was the one where you thought that the Packers actually had it and had the Vikings luckily get out of that jam? Was it the onside kick? Because they were getting that onside kick. Nobody gets the onside kick. And this is the second week in a row, or the second game this year where it's come down to, well, we need the onside kick, so we actually have a 98% chance to win this because nobody ever gets the onside kick. That's the only way you can get a one-score game on the Vikings. So I defy you. I challenge you. In what way did the Vikings not thrash the Packers? What problem did they have that the Packers didn't have their own version of it worse? Like the Vikings had their coverage issues, but the Packers had coverage issues. Holy moly, did they have coverage issues with Jordan Addison going crazy for 2 touchdowns and Justin Jefferson getting his as well. I defy you. I don't know. It just feels like the Vikings won in every single phase, and they backdoor made it look close. That's where I'm at. Ask me questions about this. You can send them to me anytime at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com or via the Google form, which is linked in every show in the show description or on YouTube or the show notes on whatever app you listen to podcasts on. I will see you all tomorrow for that. And as always, Skol.